radars on the other centers at all on that particular area, that object that's up in the air?
It's up in the air.
Affirmative.
What's the altitude about?
I don't know, probably right around 30,000 or so, and it's with a strobe, it starts from going counterclockwise, and the length is unbelievable.
RK5 in the next 2 to 3 minutes, be looking off to your right side. If you see anything about 30,000 feet, one aircraft reported does something. It wasn't a weather balloon or anything. It was a long, white-looking thing with a strobe on it. Let me know if you see anything out there.
Any traffic off our left lane right now?
I've got something passing off here at 9 o'clock in about
Meu Deus! Ai, Jesus!
In the early hours of January the 20th, 1996, a number of UFOs were reported in the skies above central Brazil. Some of them were captured on home video. Then, in a bizarre twist, reports started emerging that one of these UFOs had actually crashed near the town of Varginha, and that the local military had recovered some alien bodies. For many in the UFO community, this was the most significant event since the Roswell crash of 1947.
We know we have a lot of evidence here, and there is a huge cover-up in Brazil since January 1996. I do believe we were visited by alien creatures who were captured by the militaries, and I want to know what happened to these creatures. I think the whole world wants to know if these creatures are still in Brazil, and definitely what happened to them.
It's just unbelievably undeniable. Undeniable. Now, it doesn't matter what the military say, they are hiding. They are hiding. They do have captured aliens in Brazil alive.
Pessoas de Varginha, no sul de Minas, juram que viram um ser muito estranho. Nem homem,
As
nem
dawn
bicho.
broke on January the 20th, Varginha found itself in the center of a UFO maelstrom.
Muita gente acredita que trata-se de um extraterrestre. E dizem também que o ser foi capturado pelas autoridades e é mantido escondido em algum
Well, the
lugar.
town was just going insane because everybody was on the streets, because many UFOs were sighted at that time. So people was just connecting one thing to another. I'm talking about hundreds, thousands of people on the streets, and everybody wanted to know, demanding answers. It was a kind of a mass hysteria, I can tell you this.
In fact, there were hundreds of reports of UFOs in the skies above Brazil, flooding into the authorities.
Surge uma novidade importante no caso do extraterrestre que teria aparecido em Varginha, sul de Minas. Uma testemunha militar afirma que a criatura foi mesmo capturada com vida.
O Fantástico teve acesso às declarações secretas desse militar. Segundo os pesquisadores que acompanham o caso Varginha, ele sabe o que está dizendo.
Mas os pesquisadores acreditam que a grande evidência do caso Varginha é o depoimento de militares que teriam participado das operações de captura e retirada da cidade do suposto ET.
The local military base which was involved in this incident was an officer training academy called ESA. When asked about the UFO crash and alien capture, they flatly denied it. But bizarrely, they explained the eyewitness reports of aliens at the hospital as a misidentified dwarf couple.
Porque na realidade, aparições de extraterrestres ou de OVNIs, isso não houve porque não houve uma comprovação. O que ocorreu mesmo foi o seguinte: no dia 20 de janeiro, estava chovendo muito forte em Varginha, correu um temporal. Esses caminhões Mercedes-Benz, que eles estavam indo na garantia. Então nós deslocamos 2 caminhões até Varginha para que fizesse a manutenção prevista. Tudo disso aí, no desenrolar de toda a história, houve uma série de coincidências de fato. Havia no hospital de Varginha um casal de anões, onde a senhora estava grávida para ganhar um neném. Ter colocado no caminhão e levado para o hospital de Varginha, onde o pessoal disse ter encontrado um casal de ETs, que na realidade era um casal de anões, estavam lá e essas meninas estavam para ter filho.
I understand that some of the Brazilian military authorities have said that the whole incident may stem from a bizarre misidentification of a real case which actually involved a dwarf couple being taken, I think, to hospital. Now, I don't know about that myself, but I mean, speaking from my own experience of the military, they are an honourable group of people, and if they say that this took place and that this is the explanation, I think we clearly have to put some store by that.
It's possible that a second alien creature may have escaped this crash, because several hours after the alleged death of the first alien in the hospital, a second alien creature was spotted hiding in waste ground on the edge of town.
Estava vindo de serviço e resolvemos passar por ali, que é caminho de casa, né? A gente mora no Santana, então era trajeto. E passamos por ali para ir embora para casa, no trio, né?
A gente viu uma criatura estranha que no momento que a gente passou, não olhava pra gente não. E quando a Katy gritou, aí que ela olhou pra gente.
We asked the girls to tell us what the creature looked like. With the help of an artist, we built up a detailed sketch.
Marrom. A pele dele parecia ser muito mole. Porque o sol tava batendo nele, tava iluminando, parecia ser muito mole, tipo no coração, uma coisa assim. Os olhos vermelhos arregalados, as 3 perseveranças na cabeça, veia sobre o ombro. Quando ela olhou pra gente assim, ela passou que tava sofrendo, que tava ansiosa, que tava com alguma dor. Não, assim, foi na hora que eu olhei assim, que eu fixei meus olhos na criatura, foi o jeito, assim, parecia que tava sofrendo. O jeito que ela olhou pra mim. A Katy e a Liliane saiu correndo. Eu fiquei parada. Aí elas voltaram, me pegou e a gente saiu correndo e fomos embora.
They saw what looked like a devil. That comes the story, because this creature had three things in the head that resembled like horns, but weren't horns at all. And it had a brown skin, a brown, like a grease oil all over, and the veins, black, purple veins, were very visible on the upper arm and the neck.
The 3 sisters' description of the creature they saw was remarkably similar to the one given by the soldier in the hospital. The local military commander offered an explanation.
Por causa desse temporal que caiu em Varginha, existe lá um senhor anão, ele é anão, baixo, ele é bem desfigurado, ele é retardado mentalmente. E por causa dessa chuva ele havia se machucado muito, né? Porque não tinha como fugir da chuva e ele estava próximo a esse terreno baldio, onde essas 2 meninas dizem terem visto essa criança. Porque realmente, se nós olharmos para esse senhor, ele realmente tem uma aparência que nos causa até um certo constrangimento e uma aflição, porque ele tem alguma disformidade física, né? Ele tem a pele realmente escura.
Encontrar esse animal? Meu Deus do céu, nunca vi negócio desse. Será que ele tem coração? Tem alguma veia? Você conseguiu?
Clearly there was something strange there, but there are a large number of strange wild animals in Brazil, and some of them are certainly not creatures with which Western researchers are familiar. It's a large country, and there are all sorts of unusual animals there that may indeed cause someone to say, my goodness, what's that?
How sure are you that they were telling the truth?
Well, for us, they're telling the truth, because what they saw there, it's not a dog, it was not a... because if you try to understand what kind of animal could look like this, you won't find it, although we have many animals in Brazil. But the oil all over the body, it was shining. The bumps on the top of the head, and also the eyes. Okay, we're talking about a humanoid. So when you're confusing with a dog or with a monkey, you could say, well, it could be a monkey, but it's almost impossible, because a monkey wouldn't have those characteristics.
One of the other interesting things about the Varginha incident is that if you look at the testimony of the girls who actually saw this creature, they did not use any sort of language indicative of a UFO or an alien event. They actually referred to the creature as, quote, the devil, unquote. And it's very important to realise that witnesses, when they report something like this, will simply dredge something up from their own belief system, their own knowledge, and particularly importantly, their own cultural background. So what we have here, I think, is clearly an incident where something was seen, but this idea that it's necessarily something to do with UFOs and aliens may only have arisen once Western UFO researchers became involved, because that's not what the original witnesses said.
A few days later, another eyewitness came forward, an English-speaking lawyer who said she had seen the actual site where the UFO was alleged to have crashed.
I live about 20 minutes from the center of Varginha, right on the edge of the hills and forests which circles the town. It was about 2 a.m. and I was asleep when I heard a huge explosion coming from outside. It sounded like a bomb had gone off, a huge explosion. When I looked out the window, I could see this huge massive fire and smoke coming from the hillside about 1 kilometer from my house. I really had no idea what had happened, but obviously it was that. So I called the fire department immediately in Varginha, but there was no answer, which I thought was strange. But within a few minutes, I could hear their sirens, so I guess someone had already let them know. Just a few minutes later, I could see like 3 army trucks speeding up in the dirt track, which leads to where the explosions were, and then a helicopter. I remember thinking, why were the army there, and how did they get to this thing so fast? It only happened less than 5 or 6 minutes ago. I kept watching as both the fire department and the army units went right to where the explosion was, but it was way too far for me to see any detail. I started to think that maybe a military plane or a helicopter crashed, and that was the explosion I heard. But I still had no idea what had happened. I remember that the police and the fire department sealed off the whole area. It was only later in the day when I heard the news about these alien things, these creatures in town, and I realized that that might have well been, probably was, the crash site. That's when it all started making sense. I mean, I couldn't see much, just fire and smoke and stuff, but something crashed out there. I can 100% confirm that.
A few weeks after the incident, one of the soldiers who was present at the crash site, Marco Eli Shirezi, died from unknown toxic poisoning. His sister Marta is convinced he was poisoned through contact with this alien creature, and has been fighting to get an independent autopsy on his body.
De trabalho na polícia, certo? E fez o trajeto todinho com a criatura, né? Saiu do local, foi até o Hospital Humanitas e depois só deu baixa lá na escala dele por volta de 00:45. Só que na hora que meu irmão fez a captura lá, ele podia ter simplesmente encostado, porque certos exames que eu tenho acusa que foi contagiado por pele. Não precisava ter nenhuma infecção, nenhum machucado, certo? Então, por isso que realmente houve essa captura, sim. E meu irmão participou, sim, porque meu irmão não tinha nada.
Bizarrely, the doctors said that an autopsy wasn't necessary and ordered the body to be buried immediately. The blood tests were made available and showed that his blood contained 8% of unknown toxic substances.
Somebody from inside the military police from Virginia told me, I have this tape recorded, that Marco Eli Cherezi was involved in this capture. Somehow he got closer or even touched the creature. And all of a sudden he couldn't move his arms, he couldn't feed himself. He was really bad. They took Marco Eli Cherezi to the hospital. The doctors didn't say a thing to the family. A few days later, he died.
In fact, a member of the fire brigade, who was also involved at the crash site that night, also died of toxic poisoning. And although the people of Virginia and the media demanded answers, the authorities remain silent. According to our sources, whatever was recovered from the crash site was eventually flown out of the country in an unmarked transport plane within a few days. Destination unknown.